Good day, fellow deal makers. Welcome to the Deal Scout. On this show, we have conversations with deal makers to hear their story and to find out what kind of deals they're working on. So that allows me to go on the scout for deals. On today's show, we're going to have a conversation with Mr. Eric, who has an awesome hat. Now, you might be just listening in on the audio. You may want to go back one day and watch the YouTube. This guy has a sports coat, awesome hat, pocket square, looks the part. Eric, welcome to the show, man.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Josh.
Yeah, man. All right. So tell us a little bit about who is Eric.
Who is Eric? Eric is someone who is very passionate about people building generational wealth. And, not me just going around saying that, but being able to provide, tactics for people to actually do that. I have a lot of love and kind of this affinity for people who have high incomes and they're kind of suffering in silence out there. They have this status, or their family knows that they make a lot of what's considered a lot of money. And they don't really want to speak up and say, hey, you know what? I need some help. I need to learn how to manage this income and kind of get to the next level.
Suffering in silence. Now, people who are high earners, give us an example of, who some high earners could be.
So think about your corporate attorney, for example. They work in a global law firm. They might make $350 a year or above. Trying to go for partner, putting in a lot of hours, but they don't have a lot of time to manage their finances, or conceptually they just don't get what the steps are to do it.
Got it. So what kind of problems might they have, right? Like if we think about it, like when I was going to college, they're like, what kind of job do you want? Something that pays a lot, right? So they're high earners, six figure, 350 a year. They're doing really well. Cash flow's coming in. What problems might they have?
Well, the biggest problem that I see with this group of people is the spending. So we always hear these fancy terms, wealth management and advisory services and all this stuff, but budgeting sometimes doesn't sound as sexy, but it's one of those things that you will be surprised many people just never learn how to create a plan for the spending of their money. And a lot of times it's that simple. It's not that they don't have the financial resources, right? So they're making 350, but it's just the money's being spent and there's no real plan. And they're not really going back and kind of figuring out where is all this money going on a daily basis.
Yeah, the budget, that's a bad word. That's a four-letter word to some people, budget, right? And spending. How do you help, like, all right, I'm making $500,000 a year. I try to make this money so I don't have to budget. Like, do people who make that need budgets, or what kind of issues do they run in as they're earning more and more every year?
That's a great question. I feel like a lot of times people don't think they need it until something comes up. So sometimes people will be sitting there and they're like, you know what? My buddy is a millionaire. They have a 7-figure net worth, but I don't. What's the problem? And it'll be things like that that make people kind of go back and say, okay, I don't really want to create a plan for the spending of my money, but I do want to reach 7 figures, and I know something has to change. And the first thing we look at is, okay, where's the money being spent?
Yeah. So psychologically, if we're working together and you're like, hey man, you're making a lot of money, yeah, but you're also spending a lot of money. If you want to crest that ceiling, we need to look at some of the spending. What kind of questions do you get, like, and pushback do you get from potential clients when you chat with them about that?
Well, one of the first things I always hear is I have a CPA. That's number one. I have a CPA. Well, I have a CPA for that. Or the second thing I always hear is I have an app that does that for me. Those are the top two, CPA, and I have an app for that. And those are the two I have to kind of fight with people on the front end and say, that's great that you have a CPA. Your app is really cool. But as we both can see, something's still off. Because I always ask this question, what's your discretionary income? And people will just kind of give me this blank look like, discretionary income, what do you mean? But when I ask that question, I'm able to kind of draw people in because, if you're making $350 a year, you're an attorney, you don't want to feel sometimes like you don't know something. It's like, well, discretionary income, what do you mean? And so once I explain that to them and say, hey, that's just a fancy word for what's left over after all your financial responsibilities are taken care of, right? What's that number? So you're bringing in $15,000 a month. You have $10,000 worth of expenses. And many people are surprised to know, oh, I have $5,000 in discretionary income. And they're shocked. They're like, I didn't realize I had that much. So that other $5,000 is just being spent on stuff.
Mm. All right. So I read in this book, Profit First, Mike Michalowicz, and he talks about the Parkinson's law. It's pretty much, I had to look it up because I forgot exactly how it looks, but it's the theory that our demand for a resource increases to meet the availability of what's there. So when you're making 100 grand, you find out how to make 100 grand work just barely. When you make 200 grand, you find out how to make 200 grand work just barely, right? Is that what I'm hearing? So as people go bigger and bigger, the expense load also increases.
It does. I think they also call that lifestyle inflation.
Hmm.
So it's like, oh, 10 years ago, I was making $50,000. I made that work. But now I'm making $500,000, right? And so now there's all this new stuff that I just feel like I have to have, and this different food and trips that I want to go on, which is fine. But it's, if you were making $50,000, you would probably still be able to survive.
Yeah. You know what? This doesn't seem like a very popular thing about, let's look at discretionary income. Let's look at, a budget. Let's look at this. Now, do you find that these things are necessary for people to crest from a 6-figure net worth to a 7-figure net worth? Do you find that this is one of the hurdles?
It is. It is. And it's also the biggest advantage that they have because most of these people have the resources, is just identifying what they are. So, like that example that I gave where, oh, we got $5,000 left over a month. So now that's $5,000 that we can take to make your 7 figures happen per month. So what? That's $60,000 a year that you have that's already available. I think one of the biggest things that people think is, well, if I want to become 7 figures, I have to make more money. And that's 9 times out of 10, that's not really true. You have the money, it's just using it in a different way.
All right. So give us an idea of how you got into this business and maybe some of the things that you've achieved while being in the business. Take us back, man.
Okay. So I came into the corporate world. I was working for Oprah Winfrey. I did not have a high profile role or anything, but I was definitely part of her Harpo Studios situation. I was a guy who would sit in this little room, and after they shot the footage at some fancy shoot that Oprah did, we had these people you called loggers. So I had to type out all of the dialogue. That was my job.
Cool.
I did that for a while, and then I decided that I thought I wanted to become an attorney, a lawyer. So I ended up going to school to get a paralegal certificate, which was a great experience. It did give me some more information about corporate, but specifically real estate. I got intrigued by the idea of becoming a real estate investor or just being in that world. And so I started working as a paralegal, a real estate paralegal, and I became amazed at how these clients would leverage other people's money to make more money. And I didn't understand the concept of leverage at the time, but I just knew they were using somebody else's money, the bank, to do something for their family and generate more income. And so I just kept going on the real estate path. And then at a certain point in my career, a person that I was working with came to me and said, hey, we kind of heard that you're interested in like entrepreneurship and real estate. We're forming this community development corporation, and we'd like for you to become part of it. And at first I was looking like community development corporation. I couldn't even believe that they wanted me to be a part of it. Like I had no knowledge of this at all. I didn't really see how I could add value. Well, come to find out, so a lot of this stuff that I learned as being doing the paralegal work, it carried over into community development work because a lot of the people that we were working with in the community wanted to do real estate deals. And
Mm.
so it became a perfect marriage. And so I was sitting on this board of directors, and one day one of the ladies on the board said, "Have you ever thought about going into the financial industry?" And I think she said that because at the time I was also the board treasurer, and I guess I was doing a decent job. And so she invited me to this convention in Las Vegas that literally changed my entire life. I was presented with this vision of how I could become something bigger. I could become a leader, an entrepreneur, but also help people earn financial freedom, right? And so I had never heard anything like this. And I'm probably one of those rare people. And it was like this sort of MLM structure that people, like sell vitamins and all this different stuff. But this one was for the financial industry. But I didn't care about that so much as I felt like this would give me the opportunity to become a leader because I was doing these different things, but I didn't feel like I had the ability to lead other people. And so I came into this company to do the financial work, and it started out with insurance, selling annuities, life insurance, health insurance. And that helped me get over my sort of fear of not being a leader or also kind of talking. I'm an introvert, so I had this issue of like feeling like I didn't have the energy to kind of talk to people about different stuff. But as you can imagine, or maybe like the insurance industry is rough. Like you really have to go out there and present yourself to people and have a lot of conversations. And so that broke me out of that. And so after a while, Josh, I said, you know what? The insurance thing is cool, but I'm kind of seeing that people have many other needs other than just insurance. People are having problems with their budgeting. They're having issues trying to figure out how to purchase real estate. They're not necessarily understanding the concept of leverage, like using other people's money or time to do things. I want to take this to the next level. And so at that point, I sat for my Series 65, the investment advisory license. And that process also changed my life because the Series 65 makes you learn all of the primary, like a lot of major concepts as it relates to money outside of insurance. And I actually did not pass the test the first time I thought, right? So I took the test, I got a message and they said that you failed. And so I had to schedule, and I was embarrassed. I really was. I'm like, because I put in hours and hours and hours of time to do this test. So they emailed me, said, you didn't pass, schedule another test. So I scheduled another test. I studied for another 2 months. And 2 days before I was supposed to take the test, again, FINRA reached out to me and said, hey, we made a mistake. You actually did pass. And I was like, are you serious? They were like, yes. I said, who are you? They were like, I'm FINRA representative, blah, blah, blah. I was like, can you send me a confirmation email? Like, I was just trying to make sure that it was accurate what they were saying. But come to find out, I had actually passed the test. And so after that, I just gained a lot more confidence about my ability, right? I was like, okay, you know this stuff. You passed the test. Let's get out here and try to reach as many people as you can. And along the way, I decided, you know what? It's okay for you to focus on high income people. Because I told somebody that one time and they were like, well, why would you only focus on high income? Everybody needs help. And I came to the conclusion that yes, everybody might need help, but I've seen with my own eyes that a lot of people were suffering that had high incomes. And I wanted to work for them.
Yeah. Now, we might have just lost power just now, but I could still hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
All right, let me switch over to my other. Holy moly, that was interesting. Someone blew a circuit in here.
Yeah.
Hold
I was
on.
wondering why it went red.
This is our studio, man, and we've got some Bitcoin miners and some mining companies next to us. So yeah, I can still hear you. You still good on your side?
I'm all good. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So you failed the test, and like you said you were embarrassed. Like and you actually passed. Like, did you think that maybe that you should give up? Did that ever cross your head where you're like, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. I'm done.
Nah, I'm one of these people, I just couldn't accept the failure. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just, I just kind of dug deep and said, no, you have to pass this test. I kind of looked at it like there were just too many people out there that I thought I could help, and I just couldn't let them down. I took myself out of it. And
Yeah.
I was just like, you got to pass this test so that you have the ability to help others.
Yeah. And then when you came out, you said, I'm gonna focus on high earners, right? That's where I'm gonna put my flag. And people tried to talk you out of it. They were saying, why not work with everybody? Everybody needs your help. Why not choose that? How did you decide, like, this is where I need to stick and this is what I'm committed to do?
One time I went to see this lady, and she was actually had made $1 million in 3 years, right? And I was sitting down with her talking to her about insurance, and she just started crying like uncontrollably. And I looked at her and I said, what's wrong? Like, are you okay? And I kind of stood up and tried to, console her a little bit. And she said, Eric, I have made all of this money and I have completely wasted it. I don't have an estate plan.
Mm,
I don't have enough insurance. I don't have all this stuff. This is like humiliating. And in that moment, I said, there's other people out here like that. And I want to be there to try to. And at the time, I really wasn't equipped to help her beyond what I was talking to her about, which was insurance. But that made me know that there was something else that I was destined to kind of get involved with and help with.
yeah. So while you were doing this, you put your flag in the sand, like, I'm gonna focus on this. Did you ever have the temptation to start, like, maybe I'm wrong, this is a lot harder than I thought, like getting in front of high net worth individuals and all this stuff, that's a challenge sometimes, because you said it earlier, some people suffer in silence, right? They're busy, they're working 80 hours a week, they got their country clubs, they got the, like, they're running around crazy, they're taking their kids to all these, like, or trying to get to that, busy. How
Yeah.
did you how did you how'd you crack that industry? How did you really make a dent there?
It was tough, Josh. I mean, I felt guilty initially because when I came in the insurance industry, you talk to any and everybody. That's just
Mhm.
how we were how we were taught. Like if you had a pulse, we're going to talk to you about insurance, and we did. So that was like a totally different thought process to now say, no, I'm not going to talk to everybody. I'm only going to talk to the specific group. And yeah, I did have people who would come to me and try to guilt me and say, well, how could you do that and this, that, and the other. But there was just something in me that let me know that I felt like there were enough people that were out there that were talking to just everyone, but I really wasn't seeing where somebody just had this specific focus. Now, of course, when you think about the wealth managers and the people that you kind of see on television that only deal with people that have $100 million, I saw that, but I didn't see for the person who makes 250 a year and they don't really have an investment portfolio yet. They don't have the millions of insurance and all. It was like a gap. It was like you're either all the way on this side or you're all the way on the other side. But what about the guy that makes 100,000 a year or the woman? I didn't see anybody really addressing that.
Yeah. So I see, that you're passionate about, teaching financial education, and you're passionate about bringing people up, right, and helping people crack that financial ceiling, go from six
Absolutely.
figure to seven figure. In your experience, like, what are some other hurdles? So spending, discretionary income is one that you see. You talk about leverage. Now, how does leverage come into play the point of cracking that ceiling? And what other things might we consider if we want to go from six to seven figure?
Another great question. So the biggest thing I feel like is a lot of people feel like they have to actually do everything in the process of going from 6 to 7 figures, meaning I'm at this law firm, I'm working all these hours, so I must have to work a bunch of hours to get from 6 to 7. And so, kind of talking to them about the fact that, hey, you know what? You actually don't have to do all of the work, right? There's things that we can do where you can use someone else's time. And so they'll be like, well, what do you mean by that? So I'll say, for example, they'll be like, okay, well, I want to invest I want to be like a real estate investor. We start having conversations about things like REITs, real estate investment trusts.
Mhm.
Somebody else is out there doing all the legwork. They're acquiring the property, they're getting the tenants and all that stuff. Why not just buy some shares and receive the dividends? Right? You don't have to be the one to go out and buy the property and talk to all the people and get it rented out. Leverage this person's time, things like that. Or a lot of times people are interested in like doing startups. And I kind of talk to them about, hey, you know what? If we find a really good startup that kind of matches what you want to do, why don't you just invest in the startup, right?
Right.
They've gone out there, they've done all the work, they've done the business plan, all this different stuff. Why not just become an investor
Yeah.
and invest in that startup? So just kind of trying to, the mindset of like, hey, you don't have to do it all. Somebody else is doing it. How can you tap into that?
Yeah. So first of all, man, I appreciate you walking through some of these challenges. We just got our power back over here, so hopefully we didn't lose anything. But what you're saying is like this is a mindset shift, right? I grew up in construction swinging hammers, right? So not the brightest guy, not the I don't have the pedigree. I didn't go to Yale. My family didn't. We grew up swinging hammers, right? And if I wanted to make more because I wanted to buy a bigger truck, or if I wanted to buy a new hat because I like hats just like you, right? Like, what do you need to do? You need to work more hours or go pick up another job or go do something. So, this
Yeah.
idea of leveraging someone else's X, fill in the blank, time, resources, money, whatever,
Yeah.
that is one of the tricks on how to accelerate your financial net worth, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we come from a similar background because my whole family, they're pipe fitters.
Yeah. Oh, you must be from up north. Where are you located, man?
I'm in Chicago.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, when going through this, man, I've had to lose everything, build it, lose it, right? Because this mindset shift, like my finances could only go as high as my mindset was.
Indeed.
And every time I hit that top, if I didn't learn and grow in my mindset, I would just go back to the bottom, and then I have to rebuild again. When working with individuals, especially like guys like me, right, who are hard drivers, we're entrepreneurs, we like the startups, we like venture capital, we're out to get it, right? We're hustling. Like, how do you help, or what kind of things do you provide to us to educate us on mindset growth, and to show us that we can actually do it, and we don't always have to just be the guy swinging the hammer.
Yeah. So the first thing I do, I don't know if you heard of this concept, but it's called, I have people, and some people push me on this initially, but I have them write out their money story. You're like, money story? What do you mean? I'm like, I want you to write out your life story in totality, everything. And then I want you to go back and pull out specific events as it relates to money. Because to your point, like, because I had to do this with myself. Like, all I'm doing is what I had to do with myself, and I had to go back and see like, why is my mindset the way that it is now?
Hmm.
So I had to definitely go back and revisit, and I found some interesting things. And so when we do that exercise, people are like, wow, that's part of my problem. My grandfather used to always say that rich people were evil,
Yes.
for example, or my dad used to always curse out people who had a lot of money, and it's all this stuff is rolling around in your subconscious and it's affecting you as an adult.
Uh, so this is so true. Like, and I thought this is so funny. There's a I grew up in church and such like that. Like I said, swinging hammers. Just trying to be a good guy who works really hard. I'm educated. I went big into debt to get my college degree. First in the family to graduate from college, and I was massively into debt, trying to earn higher, earn more. And this mindset, and I heard this in church, and I heard people say this, and they said it wrong. They said money is the root of all evil. So anytime I got close to money, I would burn that crap to the ground. you know but that's not true. It says the love of money is the beginning, the root of all evil. And I had to change my mind about money until I didn't have any wealthy friends growing up, like, and if I did, I didn't know that they had money. I didn't know what money was. But then I started seeing generous people who were making a lot of money, giving a lot, who scooped me up and said, "Hey, I'm helping you." Right?
Right.
What was the first time, cuz you grew up from a family of, pipe fitters, and you're an entrepreneur yourself. When's the first time that you saw real wealth and you saw the beauty and the good side of wealth versus maybe our perception of it growing up?
Yeah, so I would have to say that whole real estate paralegal experience is the first time that I feel like I saw wealth up front, up close.
Mhm.
You're doing these deals, and the client is coming into the office, and they have to provide these financial statements to the title company and all this different stuff, and you're just looking like, wow, this guy has $10 million. Like, I did just never, I couldn't even conceptualize that before. And then I'm seeing some of them, like they have all of this stuff, but they're also doing the charitable things that you kind of referenced. It's like, yeah, I'm actually taking some of this money and I'm going to provide it to this not for profit. We're going to do a public private partnership to do this building, this affordable housing deal. And I'm like, wow. Like, and don't get me wrong, as we know, affordable housing is a lucrative industry for developers, but as a developer, you definitely don't have to do that, right? You could totally do something else. And so it just kind of blew my mind that they would be worried about people having somewhere to live that they didn't even know. That's just not something. I didn't grow up worrying about people that I didn't know necessarily. So that was just a mindset shift. And I feel like a lot of these people were pretty humble. I mean, they weren't. I can count on my hands how many times I met people that were in that position that were arrogant. Like you said, like they were willing to give information. I've had developers say, hey, if you're interested in doing this, here's some grants you should check out. Like, just very willing to assist and give that knowledge transfer. And I really appreciate it.
Yeah. No, that's super cool, man. With you personally, right? Like you've been doing this for how long now? Now that you started, working with high earners, like how long have you been in the game?
About a decade, about 10 years.
About 10 years.
Yeah.
What are some of the results, some of the success stories that you've seen in your business and then in your client's business?
Yeah, for me, one of the biggest things I'd say was just the success story is that I learned how to become an entrepreneur because I didn't come from that. And then I went straight from the sort of blue collar thing to college, and then straight from college into corporate. So there was no education on like, hey, here's how you run your own business. And then it was about, okay, you're running the business, but like, can you now build the systems and become profitable and all of that? So I'm very happy about that, especially because when I started off in the insurance industry, they had this sort of pre-packaged business for you. Here's your email, here's your pamphlets. It's like everything was done for you. And so I had to go out and learn how to do all these things for myself and then be able to share this information with other people. So very happy about that. Overall, I've been able to help people get rid of millions of dollars worth of debt. Like, I'm really big on debt management. The high income folks, especially, they usually have a lot of debt. So I've helped people do that. I've helped people to build $1 million stock portfolios. I'm very happy about that, as well as real estate. But the numbers aren't necessarily what I'm excited about, Josh, as much as being able to tell them how to do these things for yourself. One thing I say to every client at the very beginning is my job is for you not to need me within the next 9 to 12 months. I want you to know everything that I know about what we're dealing with. I'm going to give you all the information, the systems, and everything. And when we're done, I want you to look back and say, I know how to do what Eric is doing. Not, I need Eric. I need to keep talking to Eric. No, Eric's out. You got what you need.
You got what you need. So the name of your group. So when did you go from corporate and just kind of talking about insurance products to, actually working and launching your own? Because you said you learned how to be an entrepreneur and you started your own thing. What did that look like?
That was rough. That was a rough process.
I get
You
it.
talk about the classic entrepreneur story of failing and being confused. You know how you can get on the internet and just keep searching all this stuff and watching all these videos and stuff. I was just confused. I didn't really have a clear direction. So what I had to do is go out and hire coaches to help me. And that's why I have a lot of respect for the coaching industry. That was another industry that I didn't really know about. But I found out like there's people out there that are credible that can coach you and give you the business skills that you need to get to the next level. And so I just had to invest. I had money saved up and now I will say this, it took me a while to get into the mindset of making the investment. But one day I had to sit down and say to myself, now you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to college. You've got all these student loans and you won't invest $10,000 to get your business to the next level? Like, are you kidding me? Yeah. So it took me a while to make that shift mentally to understand that.
Isn't that funny? Like, why do you think that is? Same here, man. Like I burnt out my government pension to build a fitness technology company. I went all in multiple times. And, I saw these coaches out there and I'm like, man, that's expensive. Yet I went broke. I went bankrupt. I lost all my money. And I'm thinking that was expensive, man. How did you make that leap and you write your first check for your coach? What did that look like?
Man, I don't know. I think I'm one of these people that when I hear the client testimonials or I see them, that's what resonates the most with me. And so these people, there'd be these coaches, they would have like hundreds of testimonials and a lot of them were on video. And I'm like, all these people couldn't be lying. You know what I mean? Like some of this has got to be, because I'm still skeptical. I'm thinking there's some kind of trick or they're lying or something, but those testimonials really drew me in. And then when I'd get on how people usually do like a complimentary call, and I get on the call with the coaches and they were just very inviting, just their whole style. It was like, look, I'm able to help you get this transformation. You want to get from A to Z. And here's the other thing that I like. They specialized in one thing.
Yeah.
So I didn't like these people that say, I can help you do 100 things. They might be like something real simple, like, hey, I can help you get your business credit profile set up so you can get a business credit score and start getting some business credit. That's what I do. That's all I do. Or I'm the social media, whatever it is. So I like the fact that they specialize and that made me feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
Now, I've even done that recently, Josh. I invested in a coach to do better on LinkedIn.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I was trash on LinkedIn for like the last decade. I was one of those people just putting up random stuff, didn't really communicate with anybody. And I realized that I wanted to expand my platform. And my wife helped me understand that LinkedIn would be a great place to do it because she was saying that people are actually looking for stimulating conversations about specific topics, right? Totally. Where like on Instagram is cool, but they're not necessarily trying to have a deep conversation on Instagram.
Yeah. All right. So you launched your business. What's your business called?
Hubris Global Wealth Management.
What does that mean? Where did you come up with that name?
So hubris, as we know, like that word just means like you're, sort of arrogant, overly confident. And I felt like I had enough experiences that I was arrogant. I was downright arrogant about the fact that if somebody worked with me and they were willing to just follow direction and be coached, that I could get them the result. I was just that arrogant about it. And it had to be about building wealth. It couldn't just be about insurance or one of these kind of one-off stocks. It's got to be about, so the word wealth was important because it had to be about the whole. And then once we do all this stuff, it's got to be managed. We can't just do it one time and just run away from it. And so every word sort of had meaning. And the global part was more about me dealing with your financial situation globally and not in a singular manner.
Yeah. What is as you're growing this business, I see that you also have a podcast show.
Yeah.
Right? And you did some podcasts. And tell us about that. Give a shout out to that.
Yeah, man. So our podcast is Money, Sex, Gen X, which I know is an interesting name. And my co-host Scott Stewart and I, we were just talking about how can we have Black Gen X male representation in the media. We were just thinking like, hey, we don't really see ourselves in the media like that. Like we're talked about when something's happening, like something violent or just something negative. But like, when do you get a chance to hear from a Black male Gen X perspective who's not Jay-Z or Chris Rock, just your everyday guy, like what's on their mind? And we knew we had something to offer. And so we decided to do a show.
That's super cool. Since you did that show, tell us about some of the cool things that you've experienced having a podcast show and talking with, some cool guests, and what have you learned? What are some cool experiences that you've lived through?
I learned, first of all, that as an introvert, I actually like doing media. I would have
Yeah.
never thought that, right? But we've had some cool conversations. Like one of my favorite ones we had was the episode was called "Is College a Joke?" And you would not believe the emotions that got stirred up with that conversation, right? So just being able to have these conversations, we had a conversation about what does it mean to be African American, right? So like we just kind of dig into these topics. Should you be celibate? Was another episode we had, right? And so we
What?
brought on, yeah, it was we just get into these very like, I don't know, I don't want to say deep, but just like conversations you don't hear often. And we talk about them. It's been cool. I think having guests is the thing that I enjoy the most because most of the times we get guests that we didn't know already.
Yeah.
So somebody will reach out and be like, hey, we like this show. Can we come on? We kind of go back and forth with them to see like what would they want to come on and talk about. They come on and we get to introduce this person to a brand new audience.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
That is super cool. So, is your firm, the way that you set it up? Are you guys independent? Do you work with a larger organization? What would say is your main focus? So, kind of give us an idea of what the firm looks like.
Yeah, so it's I'm what you call a solopreneur.
Okay.
So, and that's another term that I kind of got up on the last year or so. But we're independent and we're straight direct, what they call direct to consumer. So it's like you reach out. I usually get a lot of referrals from people who I've worked with in the past. They'll refer me somebody and say, "Hey, this guy's just like me. He needs some help," or this lady, and we work together. There's no corporate structure to work through. All this stuff is just very simple.
Super cool. Super cool. What does the future look like for you as you're building out this organization and you're learning more and more and you're growing? What does the future look like?
I don't know. I want to be like a cooler version of Dave Ramsey. You know what I mean?
I think you nailed it already, dude. Look at
Yeah,
that hat.
I'm trying to. I have a lot of respect for Dave Ramsey, but I don't say that like with any disrespect. But like, I like to be the fly version of Dave Ramsey, right? Because Dave Ramsey has reached millions and millions of people, and what I like about him, he keeps it simple. He talks a lot about just basic things like budgeting, but he helps people get those transformations with their money. And what I like about is the reach. Because one thing I had to say to myself was like, okay, yeah, you've got 20 or 30 clients, but do you want to have a global voice? And I had to sit with myself and decide whether I did or not. And the answer was yes. So in the next few years, you're gonna see me more than likely. Like I hope you'll see me in the mainstream media. You'll see me on LinkedIn, but you're just going to hear me trying to reach more people with this content.
Yeah, got it. So
Goal.
you mentioned what does it mean to be African American in one of the titles of your show. In the industry that you're in wealth management and financial literacy, in helping build and grow generational wealth, do you think that that's a challenge specifically for the African American community, amongst African American men and just the community as a whole? I'm a little ignorant to this, so maybe you could help me with that.
In terms of the problem I saw, no. I think from what I've seen, this is so you always will see these reports, and I do think there's some merit to them where African American or Black people definitely have lower amounts of wealth than some of our counterparts in society. However, we'll also see these reports where other people have problems with debt management, for example. So they'll say the average US American has an average of this amount of debt. Some of these things are just universal. Now, I do realize some groups of people grow up with more information about these concepts, but I have people reach out to me from all different backgrounds.
That's cool.
And it's still that issue of I have some kind of status, right? The status might be who I'm supposed to be in society. It could be my job title. It could be my income. There's all these different layers of why I'm kind of hesitant to reach out and get some help.
Yeah. Cool, man. I appreciate you sharing that. When it comes to status, man, that is a word that kicks me in the nuts sometimes because I have to go back as, as a deal maker, as a breadwinner, as the investor, the household, the guy managing and all this stuff. Like, my job is to lead the family. And I've done a poor job in the past because I was too focused on status, right? I was over leveraged in status. And I think we see that across the board. You make more and you increase, and you call it lifestyle inflation, right? Bigger car, fancier this, fancier that, bigger house, right? And as we're going in that, man, how do you set up guardrails for yourself? Let's say for the high earners, right? For over leveraging their status and not focusing on, more of the future. Like how do you help balance that? Because that'd be a challenge for me.
Yeah, it is a challenge. And I've actually asked people that I've worked with, like, what was the main benefits of us working together? And here's the three words that they always say: accountability, guidance, and support. So the framework that I use to work with people has 7 steps. Step number 5 is something that I call build your money team. And I know you've heard Floyd Mayweather, he's got the money team thing that he's always talking about. And what I tell people is like, Floyd Mayweather is not the only person who needs a money team. And so like to have these guardrails that you're talking about, you got to have your team of support. That's where the CPA does come into play, right? The CPA, your financial planner, your coach, your mentor, all of these people, you definitely have to use them in sort of an organized way. Some people will meet with everyone collectively, which is no problem, right? But you can't, I think what people are continuing to realize is like, you just can't do all of this stuff on your own. Even if you do have the knowledge and you've been coached very well, you're still going to need some help, right? You're still working crazy hours, still have a family. So you're going to need that support team.
Yeah. One of the things that in terms of mindset and I look on your website and it says other people's resources, other people's experience, other people's knowledge, wisdom, right? Like other people's time. This idea of investing in leveraging other people's versus keeping it in house, right? Like I'm doing stuff and I'm like, I could just do that myself, or I could learn how to manage my wealth. I could learn how to create my own wealth. I'll figure it out.
No doubt.
Yeah. When when we have that mindset, what are some challenges that I might face if that's what I subscribe to and I don't change my mindset?
Number one challenge is going to take longer. And that's what I had to learn myself. Like, yeah, you can figure it out, but how long is it going to take you?
Hmm.
Usually it takes a while. That's the number one challenge. And I think just getting burned out, right? So you're doing all this other stuff, then you're going to dedicate 5 or 6 hours a day to figure out how to build wealth and do all this stuff. Like it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. And so, I think that's hard for someone who's supposed to be a high performer and they have the status. It's difficult for them to kind of wrap their mind around that because that's how they've gotten to their point of being successful. But what I always have to share with people is look, you did do that. But now we're talking about going somewhere else. And as that old saying, they say, you can't do the same thing that you did to get to where you are. That's really true. Like you do have to develop a different way of doing things to go somewhere you've never been before. It's just the fact that a lot of people, when they sit down and think about it, they're like, yeah, because I've tried it my way and it's not working.
Yeah, I've tried it my way, like Frank Sinatra, my way, but it didn't work out too well. That's why, why I have a podcast show. That's why I invest in coaches, partners. That's why I get out of my head and get out of the way. Um, Eric, man, this is super cool. What question on this podcast should I have asked you about you or your business or about money that I completely screwed up? And I'm sure we'll do more things in the future. But for this initial interview, what did I miss?
Think you missed anything. I think you asked some really thoughtful questions. Man, I just think I really liked. I would have liked to maybe go on into more detail about the how Black people fit into this equation about wealth building and all this stuff. And I'll just say this: like, I don't know the average viewer's perspective, but I'll just say because I think it's important. There's a lot of I got to be careful with using the word a lot, but there's more high income Black people specifically than people may realize
Yeah.
that are also struggling with these issues, right? So when we hear Black in the media, a lot of times it's not necessarily connected to high income, high level of resources, et cetera, et cetera. But there's this group of people that are out here and they do fit that criteria. They live all throughout the United States. I work with people all over, and they need this specific type of assistance. And I just don't think we hear about that really in the media that much.
So for those guys out there, what advice do you have for them?
My advice is real simple. Like, just it's okay to get some help. It really is. There are people out there that are speaking directly to you if you give it a chance, and they definitely have been where you are, and they have the ability to help you. Especially like this relates to the Black thing. Like I'm obviously a Black man, so I understand what might be running through your head maybe better than someone else, right? I'm not going to say just because we're Black, I understand it, but I do think there's some commonalities there because we're Black where I may be able to understand your perspective a little better than someone else, possibly.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to get some help. And it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay that you're not the main person that's doing everything and all of that. It's okay.
It's okay to get help. Absolutely. I like what you said about building your money team, right? If we think about our money as a money and have a money team, then we're like, okay, I don't need to be the quarterback and the receiver.
Nope.
Maybe I could be the coach. Maybe I could be up in the box seats, and just watching the game play out rather than having to throw the ball, catch the ball, run the ball, block the ball, right? Um, for people out there who would love to connect with you and learn more about what you're doing, find a way to do a deal with them, what's a good way to connect with you?
Sure. The best way is email. So McLoyd, EMCLOYD at hubriswealth.us. Love to work with you. You can also catch me on LinkedIn. I'm on there quite a bit now. Eric McLoyd, ERICMCLOYD. Send me a message and let me be your point guard. I like your sports analogy. Let me be your quarterback. Let me be your point guard. You're the owner. I can be your point guard and help you win a championship.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Fellow deal makers in the audience, as always, reach out to our guests, say thanks for being on the show and sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and your story with you. If what they're saying resonates with you, all their contact information will be in the show notes below. So all you have to do is after the interview, you could click on that, connect directly with our guests. Say you heard them on the Deal Scout and you want to find a way to do a deal with them. That's the purpose mission of this show, is to put deals and deal makers together. And all we do here is talk about deals. If you have a deal that you'd like to talk about, head on over to thedealscout.com, fill out a quick form, maybe get you on the show next. Till then, talk to you all on the next episode. See you guys.